All right, all right, if we're ready to go, let's call this meeting to order. I'm Chair Representative Stenquist, and so welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, and hopefully we're all getting out there like we all would like to. I dressed for this meeting and not for my other board meeting where I was underdressed, but that's okay. I was dressed for this meeting. That's right. All right. So first item is approval of minutes. This is for our and we have a quorum. Thank you. And so this is for our March meeting minutes. Is that right? So can I get a motion for that?
Motion to approve the minutes from March.
All right. Any discussion on that?
It was January. I say we didn't meet March.
Did we not meet March?
We met before the session.
Oh, I was thinking this is the first time we've met after the session. You had a point in the mountain meeting. I was thinking of another meeting that I did in March.
So I withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Amend it.
All right. All right.
Motion to approve minutes from our last meeting, which was January.
You could tell how much like the legislative session is and post-legislative session has messed with my brain. So
I will second.
all right, second on that from Josh. And any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, those minutes are approved. Okay, so next item is R 650-141 non-resident OHV decals and fees. Is that Chase?
Yes,
You're gonna talk about that?
I'll talk about those.
Okay.
So our administrative ruling for non-residents needed to be moved over from Utah State Parks to Division of Outdoor Recreation. These are one of the last rules that we need to switch over. With that, it won't be having any substantial changes to that, but we did clean up the language regarding the display of non-resident OHV decals on the OHVs as well, and that'll be in accordance with the in-state display ruling, so R650401. And then we're clarifying the residency of the OHV as required by the rule to be the home state of the primary placement of the OHV for that. So if it mainly sits in Utah, that is the primary residency of that machine and therefore should be registered as an in-state registration. So just further clarifying that so that we can explain that to our off-highway vehicle users properly and appropriately.
For those who may not understand how that works, can you give like a brief overview of like the resident versus the non-resident decals for OHV?
Yes, and Shane may need to hop in to explain even better. But if the OHV mainly has its primary placement here in Utah, even though it has an out-of-state registration or a potential under a business, because it mainly sits in Utah, just like other vehicles, motor vehicles in Utah, then it should be registered as an in-state resident machine versus a non-resident user decal, especially when the resident is actually has a Utah driver's license. With that, if it were to remain in, I don't know, places like Montana or Wyoming, then it's truly there, then that would be applicable for potential of being registered out of state under the rules, definition of the rules that we've clarified here.
Yeah, and this really comes from a section of the Motor Vehicle Act that says if an OHV or a vehicle has its home station here in Utah, it's a resident for purposes of registration. And the way this comes up is sometimes an individual register their machine to an out-of-state business. And so that person that owns the OHV is in another state. But the vehicle is used primarily and sometimes almost exclusively in Utah. And because the code says, well, if your home station is here in Utah, even if it's registered to an out-of-state business, it's subject to the resident registration requirements and should be registered here.
And you generally figure that out by noticing that they've got an in-state driver's license. Wait a minute, your OHV's registered out of state. That's
Coming from a law enforcement ranger's perspective or county deputy, they may ask that question, well, why is it registered in another state when you have an in-state residency? That doesn't necessarily mean that it truly is not allowed to be a non-resident registration. It's if the motor vehicle or the OHV, if it's mainly here in Utah, then it should be registered here in Utah versus another state on that. So we'll just ask additional questions, really reasonable, not adding too much time frame, but those are the types of questions that are added if we do see some suspicion of evading a normal in-state registration like they should.
And essentially the biggest change to this rule and moving it over is that the individual that's registering it will now have to provide a statement that the home station of the vehicle is somewhere other than Utah, just so we make sure the registrations are in compliance with the law. I don't know if any of you reviewed the rule that was provided to you. If you didn't, we did make one additional change, and that's a sub 5 to R650-414-2. And that just clarifies that the sticker should be displayed, just like Chase said, in the same way our resident stickers are displayed. That wasn't included in the rule that was provided to you, but that's the only change.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this item? Anyone on the commission? Don't see any hands. So, and this is not an action item. It's just advisory. So thank you very much for the information. All right, we'll move on. And the next item on our agenda is swearing in a new commissioner.
There's been a kind of a travel conflict, so we'll be swearing her in at the next meeting.
Next meeting.
It's Natalie Randall.
Over Iowa right now, somewhere. Right.
Okay.
Coming back from DC.
All right. Yeah.
In transit on an airplane
Okay.
at the moment, so she can join remotely either.
All right. That sounds great. Yeah. That'll be should be a great addition to the commission as well. All right. Then item number 5, legislative review. A couple items to mention. We had some good pieces of legislation, in my opinion, that passed. I passed some bills. There were some other people that passed some bills, other legislators for sure. And I need to remember all of them, but I think maybe HB 236 was one that passed, having to do with basically, one of the biggest pain points that we've heard. I know personally that I've heard is from rural counties that struggle to fund search and rescue and other recreation impacts. And so that bill provides some additional funding for those counties by basically expanding the medical, what has been just restricted, just a local option tax for medical purposes. Now it can be used for other purposes related to visitor management. So that's a step in that direction. There's still maybe some work that could be done in that arena, but that's one of them. Another bill that I'll talk about is HB 85. That one is puts a definition of e-bikes, and it started out as a simple request, really from the Division of Rec, saying, "Hey, there are people that are bolting on rotating crank arms to e-motorcycles. Let's clarify the definition." And then I heard from the National People for Bikes organization, and they suggested a much more comprehensive definition of that. So we incorporated their ideas into the bill and was able to pass that, and it actually has been getting some national attention. People for Bikes invited me to their national conference in Tucson last month to speak on a panel about it and the bicycle industry, and that was really exciting to speak to them about that. And not only that, but meet with some real movers and shakers in the bike industry. I was a little bit starstruck when I was meeting with some people over there, and even talking about some major companies that are having interest in moving to Utah. So I started those conversations as well. So that was a lot of fun. All coming from just defining what an e-bike is and it's not. So that was pretty neat. What else am I missing?
HB 90, redefining outdoor recreation infrastructure, and also expanding the uses for the fund, the adventure fund, to include things like planning,
Yes.
analysis.
And that's particularly pertinent to this commission, because I know that when we went through the round, and actually there's actually more to talk about here, so I'll segue into this. When we went through that round of prioritization and project proposals from last December, we had some proposals that technically, like the proposal, the request from the Avalanche Center, where they wanted some technology that technically wasn't allowed in the statute. And so made some clarifications through HB 90 to the statute of what that the funding, the outdoor venture restricted account that we kind of oversee it as a commission. Now we can use it. We can allocate it for projects like planning, NEPA, technology. Those kind of things can be considered for prioritization and funding by the commission. Probably a really significant development that happened this legislative session is, and I know that I've talked about this at our commission meetings, is that it had always been my understanding that the commission would prioritize projects and then send that project list to the legislature for actual appropriations. As I went through that process and talked to the appropriations chair, I talked to the people at the LFA about that, and to clarify what process do you want to have for taking the prioritization list that we come up with as a commission and present it to the legislature. And basically the answer that I got from the Executive Appropriations Committee and LFA is that in the future, they are not expecting our prioritization to go to the legislature. This commission will prioritize the projects, and then those projects will get funded. So this commission basically gets to be the final word on what gets funded, which I was just fine with that answer. So, so that's a good thing. And that also means that, and we also talked about the timing of this. So just to kind of tease this a little bit, we'll have the opportunity in probably just a few months to have another round of projects presented and prioritization, but then that'll go straight to funding without having to go to the legislature. So
does that remove some of the constraints of doing multiple awards throughout the year as well, potentially?
Potentially, because we, as this commission basically has the discretion to decide what projects get funded, and maybe we fund part of it this round, and then the next round we could provide some additional funding. That's completely up to this commission, depending on obviously the requests that we're talking about. So any questions from anybody on the commission about that process? Seems pretty straightforward. So
good news.
It's good. It's good news. Yeah. Much more streamlined, and the concerns about us providing a prioritization list that then gets completely changed. We don't need to worry about that as much.
So would that just get written into like one of the big bills, the funding?
It's an ongoing funding. So it's just
Yeah.
ongoing, it's already appropriated.
Yeah, it's already appropriated in the fund, and so it kind of like what I guess similar to with the ORI grants and stuff. It just goes.
Okay, cool.
But certainly, obviously, with a lot more flexibility than the grants.
HB88 liability.
The HB 88 with the law, basically just clarifying that, the identification for private property owners or county or other municipal landowners that are allowing for public recreation use, just clarifying that they're, the additional uses, adding rock climbing to the definition of activities that they're identified for on their private land. That was another one. Thanks. I'm forgetting all of them.
Would it make sense if we send the legislative summary that the division put together out to all the commissioners?
That would be great, Carly. That'd
Okay.
be send out a summary of all that. And certainly there were some other discussions happening. I'll highlight some discussions that I had with Representative Snyder and others related to some of the at times conflicts between wildlife designated areas and recreation uses, the WMAs, and trying to, we didn't come to a resolution, but we certainly discussed how can we work better together to understand how, basically how we can coordinate and the appropriate way to maybe allow some recreation uses or provide some accommodations there, instead of just putting a fence, a theoretical fence around the WMAs, because a lot of these are used for recreation. I hear a lot about the area around Pleasant Grove and Orem, that area, for example.
That Venn diagram has diverged quite a bit. It used to be that they didn't have to worry about it. Most of the activities taking place on a WMA were being engaged in by people who own fishing licenses and hunting licenses. But they've become more and more of a destination. Things have gotten more crowded and the demand has increased. People going there just to camp or just to ride or just to shoot. Yeah, so it's an ongoing discussion. There's validity to their concerns. We want to make sure that we're contributing in some way, and so I'm glad you had that conversation. The other one that I would also add is HB 469, which was a bill by Wilson to consolidate all DNR law enforcement. Right now, there are 4 agencies within the Department of Natural Resources that have law enforcement. That's wildlife, parks, recreation, and forestry, fire, and state land. So there was created a division of law enforcement that takes effect January 1st of 2025. There will be no more rangers working for the division. I mean, they'll still carry out our mission. Not a whole lot will change on the ground as far as what those rangers do, but they will have a different chain of command and a lot more consistency standards for them as a law enforcement agency instead of 4 of them.
So it'll be its own division and servicing Division of Rec, state parks, and others.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, they'll still check for licenses. They'll still check for OHV violations. They'll do vessel inspections and pretty much everything they've done up to this point. Maybe a little bit of changes within the state park. Need somebody with a gun and badge to clean the restrooms at a state park. That's one example. But, yeah.
Dangerous bathroom.
Yeah,
It's dangerous in there. Chase notes.
And we had a comment online from Eric Isom. He said, Chair Stenquist made the legislative list Carly reference be shared with all participating on this call. And yeah, it'll be
Yes.
part of the public record.
Add it to the public meetings website.
Public meeting, so.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, any other comments or questions on the legislative session? All right. Okay, if not, we'll move to, Brandon, you got a question?
Well, not a question, just maybe an update. So, we're continuing the conversations about counties interested in maybe looking at TRT dollars, and they're concerned with lack of funding for emergency medical response. I have been made aware that that's an interim study item, but prior to that, UAC had also reached out to Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute to see if they could provide some resources to help us really kind of dive into that issue and come up with some actual data. Jason, I don't know if they've contacted you, but I've also recommended that someone from this commission be a part of those conversations so that it's more a collaborative approach with opinions from all stakeholders. So just an update that that's something the counties are working on.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandy.
All right, if there are no other comments, we'll move on to the next item, the Outdoor Recreation Initiative update. Patrick.
Take it away. So
Hopefully everybody's got the copy of this, hard copy in the room and online of the handout.
So I'll end up sharing those slides. The first thing I'm gonna do, I just thought we could just review our awarded projects, just to give you updates on those. So for those online, I'm just gonna share this tab. Hope everyone can see that. Oh, I think we're both sharing. Or yeah, you can just go to that.
Oh, sorry.
You can just go to that one if you want. That would be great. Awesome. So I'll stop sharing.
Sorry.
So just to give an update on these, I mean, first, just thank you, Chair, thank you, Commissioners, for all the work during the session, to hear all the presentations, to get everything awarded. Just wanted to review this list. Everybody is so excited, all of these individuals. Looking down this list, I think there's just a few ones I want to bring attention to. First, the Guacamole Mesa NEPA and Trailhead Infrastructure. So our original award for that was the $182,000. And talking with them, since the Zion Regional Collaborative is technically, they cannot hold the money because they're not, they don't have a W-9. This is going to be a great opportunity where the state, because we've talked about one of the great opportunities with the Outdoor Rec Initiative is allowing the state to kind of leverage some of our efficiencies and some of our capabilities through project management, in a lot of different ways. But in this one in particular, this is going to be a great opportunity for us here in the division to serve as project manager to help support this NEPA. The expectation is we're not going to pursue the infrastructure improvements because that is a pretty small price tag for what probably will need to be done. But I'm really looking forward to us serving as the project manager, working with probably a local engineering company to get that NEPA done for that. The next one, Duck Creek, is one that we came in a little lower than their request. I think we initially had voted just kind of the remainder. In conversations with Cody and the Dixie Ranger District, they're comfortable with that amount. They said they'll put it to work, so that's great to hear. And I guess maybe just the general update is once we kind of, because I with Representative Stenquist, we're waiting for legislative approval, but now that we know we can kind of move forward, I essentially just created a application, in our grant portal. I'm having all the applicants kind of submit formalized scopes of work, budgets, timelines, those things that we just want to have before we put organizations under contract for millions of dollars. So we have that all in process. Maureen over there in the corner, our amazing contract analyst, is we're starting to send those out here very soon. Thank you to our Attorney General Shane for all his work, just kind of going over contracts. So it's moving forward. I'm really excited. But I think the next one that I want to talk about is completing the Colorado River pathway. So we came in at 2.5 million from their initial 5 million, and that was with the hope. It's okay, UDOT might see this. They are going to hopefully prioritize the ranking. I don't want to speak for Josh or for Stephanie, but it has appeared on a prioritized ranking list. It's number 39. I'm not sure, but it's been approved for funding. Barely.
Yeah, is 39 good or bad? I don't know.
It's on the list. Yes, that's the important thing. But contingent on the May UDOT Commission approval, it will be funded at $10 million now by UDOT. We just talked to Stephanie, who leads up the Utah Trails Network, and so their total project cost is around 12.5 million. So with UDOT's 10, with the commission's 2.5, we have met that total project cost. So that incredibly awesome but very difficult stretch of trail looks like it's going to now be supported. And then maybe this is just commentary on the process, but again, I'm excited just to slowly learn how to navigate, some of the flexibility we have in this program. But in this case, UDOT operates as project managers in a lot of these cases. And, so I'm sure I'll get to talk to Shane about legally, what do we do with our money? Do we send it to the BLM so they can in turn send it to UDOT? Can we just wire it straight to UDOT? So I like these opportunities to just kind of clarify what we do and how we do it. So, but great news on that one. So thank you to Stephanie, Josh, and our UDOT colleagues over there for coming in higher.
As a note of commentary, some of our staff attended a Canadian Countries Partners meeting down in Moab a couple of weeks ago, and the emotion in that room was palpable surrounding this project and these funding sources. So they wanted to pass on their thanks to the commission.
It looks like Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead and go to Jeff. I just have one.
Great. Jeff, go ahead.
So I have a question regarding the list generally once we're done talking about them individually.
Great, yeah.
So I just wanted to add specifically with the Utah Trail Network's recommendation of the prioritized list. Again, this goes to our Transportation Commission. We have recommended projects, but it is their decision and that will be done. I just always have to throw that caveat out there. So that's not how we can.
Okay, and so the rest, Cap Creek that was letting me know, they're already getting to work. They're wrapping up some of the work that they had received a UWORK grant for, a smaller award, but they're very, very excited. I had a long call with the field office manager. I don't know her exact title, but Alicia down there in Cap Creek. I think the last one that I want to bring attention to is the public property acquisition one. So this one, initially they had submitted 7 million and they wanted to not only do land acquisition, but also property acquisition. I've been talking to Commissioner Pearson from Beaver County. She unfortunately can't be here today. She's in, I think, Elko, Nevada at a meeting. But this is one where, the 3.5 million, while very generous and awesome, they are having trouble moving forward with their property acquisition. I think 5 million is the amount they really want to hit. They do have, as you see, the 1 million of their own cash match. But she, is really hoping there's an opportunity to get that additional 500,000 so they can get to that $5 million mark. So that's one of the partials that, perhaps we could talk about. And then other than that, the rest look to be going well. The Minx Mesa, that one, maybe I could just kind of review. That was one that was awarded. I think everybody notices it's a very important project. It'd be very beneficial, I think, to Wayne County, to Torrey, to all of the surrounding Capitol Reef areas. But that's the one that we voted to award it out of the following year's fiscal appropriation. And so far, I'm still working to get them under contract. I think with, as Representative Stenquist said, with this kind of new freedom of how we can approve these funds, I think that allows us this type of flexibility. So in a situation like that, we might be able to just get them under contract immediately, assuming that there is those, funds in the fund, which there are. So, so that's pretty much just the review. I think the two most important ones, or three most important, were that Colorado pathway with that UDOT commitment, potential commitment, and then just the Guacamole Mesa, the project management from the division, and then just kind of that 500,000 shortfall with Beaver County and that Powder Lake property acquisition. I know I don't want to speak too much for Commissioner Pearson, but I believe it's the Forest Service is looking to purchase that property as well, and so they're trying to get out in front of that. But again, I don't want to speak too confidently of everything that's going on in that process. So with that, Jeff, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, thanks. I want to go back to the Guacamole Mesa line item. I was contacted by Washington County. They were concerned that the organization that applied for that grant isn't actually I don't want to say it's not legitimate. It's not a very well structured organization, and Washington County expressed concern that that they could take over and help and at least host the funds for it, but they don't want that to be held against them because they have higher priorities than that they want to ask for, and they don't want that to count against a tally of equitable distribution by county or by region. But that begs the question of do we need a process by which to vet these organizations and make sure that when they come to us and apply for a grant that they're actually real and that they are the right structure to be the applicant? Or is that something that this is just a one-off that happened and we have a system in place to check for those things?
Yeah, are they a 501c3?
No. So, and thank you for that, Jeff. So I have been in touch with Washington County, specifically with Leslie Bonger, and kind of discussing this, and Emily Friedman, who was the kind of hired facilitator from the Design Regional Council. And there's a lot of kind of the cities and the counties who are taking place in this process. I think when we do look to get them under contract for this, it's not going to be a standard contract. As I've been working through this, my next step here is to actually get those communities that are most affected by this, specifically Washington County, and then work through an MOU, just so we can, when we are referring to Design Regional Collaborative, we have kind of what that means in a contractual sense or an MOU sense, which will be those listed parties. Will be Washington County and will be, like Virgin, LaBergen, all of those kind of affected communities in that area, which I think will give them an opportunity to full support if they do not want to support it. But also it can kind of help just give shape. So there is kind of a legitimate institution we're working with, which is a lot of different organizations, here to refer to as Design Regional Collaborative for the purpose of the memorandum of understanding. If that helps answer that question. And then I guess in the second question for like the formalizing it,
going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked earlier about the application process that you're putting together that hopefully will make sure that they're well-organized, well-structured organizations before we award them money.
And so, and I'm going to present kind of the progression, where this outdoor recreation initiative is going here as soon as we're done with this. So I don't want to step on that too much, but certainly the following year's systems, and we'll just continue to be more vetted, more robust in how we do this. And looks like I don't, Kelly, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm a little bit familiar with the ZRC, and I think I like Patrick's recommendation of having the MOU in place. My understanding of the ZRC is that they are intentionally not a nonprofit because it does, while it does present challenges in this situation, it does present opportunities and advantages that they can basically be kind of like a convener for a number of different groups. And so my recommendation would just be, whatever the commission decides, that we have that really clearly spelled out in the grant application process and eligibility. Because I would push back a little bit in saying that ZRC is not a legitimate organization. I think they are a very legitimate organization. They've just been structured differently. But that was a very intentional process and decision on their part. So I just wanted to say that I support the MOU, but also making the application process as transparent and clear as possible if there are concerns among the commission that related to awarding funding or approving projects from organizations like this in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And yeah, and I've attended a few ZRC meetings, and there really is, a wide array of stakeholders from that community down in like the greater Zion area, including Washington County. But I guess maybe just to your last or one of your other points with the concern from Washington County that this might be kind of held against them in the future, I would just say like that won't be the case. And hopefully I can reveal that by starting this presentation. So Carly, if you want to start with the first slide, and we'll just go in and would it be easier if let me share it? How about that?
Either way, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just share mine.
Makes sense.
While you're bringing that up, Patrick, I want to recognize Patrick and his efforts. This has been a lot of work, but it has also turned out to be a very, very in-depth, but also quite concise process. You can tell just by the past couple of conversations, he knows these applications. He's been working with applicants to work out some of the nuances. And then this piece here that he's going to introduce, I'm super proud of it and his work. So thank you, Jackie.
And I did not do this alone, so big shout out to Carly. Carly's been incredible, and then just Representative Stenquist has had talks with me. This was not done, or this was done as a just so many people have contributed ideas. Utah State University, and we'll get into a lot of this. So I want to be efficient and just kind of walk you through. I think everybody has probably heard, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of these like little presentations, but what I'm going to try to present today is kind of what the shape of this is going to look like this upcoming year, and then what the dream is for the following years. And I guess again, thank you to Representative Stenquist for letting me dream very big with this. This is ambitious, but we can do it. We have so much support, so I'm just very, very excited. So I guess this is just to kind of review, kind of what it is. This is kind of our building, which and it does give us a lot of freedom. And we can see, it's funded through those appropriations through the Outdoor Adventure Infrastructure Restricted Account, and with the updates around HB 90, it really allows us to do a lot of the things we want to do. There are certain, there's public-private sources. That's going to probably be a future development, is like learning how private sources can really act in this, kind of like the Watershed Restoration Initiative. But right now, we are looking mainly at public sources. So we do have a mission now. And again, everything that this program is doing is just living, it's in progress. And so anybody here in the commission, if you want to sit down and talk with me and give me recommendations, I know, with Commissioner Graves, we've been able to have some great talks. So please, I would happily sit down with any of you to talk more about this. But the mission is, the Outdoor Recreation Initiative aspires to be a national model for effective, collaborative, and sustainable management of outdoor recreation infrastructure. By leveraging municipal, state, federal, and private resources, the ORI seeks to create a legacy of well-preserved public recreation opportunities, offering a multitude of recreational experiences that strengthen local communities and foster a deep connection between people and the great outdoors. So that's where our mission is at. I want to go to the next slide though, to bring attention to the vision. And the vision is like, this is really what's been guiding me. But the vision for this is the Outdoor Recreation Initiative will be the tool to deliver Utah's strategic outdoor recreation plan. Y'all did just an amazing job over the past couple of years working to develop a strategic plan. And, you know, I think during the release, you know, we heard the governor talking about how, you know, like what it means to the state and how it's not just going to be a book. You know, I think, you know, one of, you know, Representative Stenquist or Commissioner Curry, one of you had said like, yeah, it's not just going to sit on the table. You know, this is going to be a document that we are going to kind of led by. And so that's what I'm really, really hoping to. I think what we're going to talk about here in a moment is going to be these regional recreation councils and build and support collaborative processes. Like this is kind of where we get there. But if you look at all of these, you know, cardinal directions, there are opportunities within this program, as like myself and Carly have been visioning it, that's really going to do a lot to support us and how we pursue this strategic plan long term. Again, here's the recommended projects. Do you need me to review all these one by one again? No? Okay, good. That was just a joke. Just
Yes, please.
And you know, again, thank you to Director Curry for, you know, just acknowledging all the work we've done. You know, we really have done a lot, and it's just been so many meetings. You can see, you know, February, March, April. It's just been RRC prep. RRC is the regional recreation councils, but it really would just be like prep. So much prep has gone into this. You know, we're really excited to launch these councils. So the final prep is going to be kind of happening like this month into next month. Next month, we want to start sending out roster invitations and then have our kickoff for these regional recreation councils. You know, the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what these councils actually are. But this is just kind of so you can see what our timeline is. I think the flexibility we have because of how this body can approve these funds, you know, makes it so our timeline is very flexible in a lot of ways. But as far as the council and that stage of this process, this is what we hope will be this year's schedule. We hope that after, you know, the effectiveness of, you know, these dollars going to these communities shows, you know, we're thinking that these are just going to be very popular and people are really going to want to get into these. We'll be able to do like longer meetings, maybe quarterly 3-hour meetings, you know, but yeah, there's I think a lot of excitement building for this program. So that's just kind of a quick overview, you know. So the councils themselves, you know, they're going to be kind of soliciting projects from their local communities, from their regions. They're going to be discussing these and ranking these similar to the watershed restoration. So once we come into like October, that's kind of when the Outdoor Adventure Commission will step in to see all of these project rankings. You know, instead of just one-off presentations, we're hoping it's going to be kind of like the chairs of these councils who can kind of present the projects that they've identified, and then it will be the OAC in turn to kind of look at all of these regional projects, and then you do the final rankings and the final approvals, you know, year after year. And you know, there'll be a lot of details to kind of figure out within those about how do we maintain like equity and how we're dispersing these, you know, what are we prioritizing, but you know, that's for this commission to decide and how it best serves the strategic plan, you know, because so much of this is just, as I said, informed by that strategic plan. These are the regions. Should have done a drum roll. So I may have presented some regions previously, but after talking to every association of government, talking to association of counties, Utah League of Cities and Towns, just talking, you know, the initial regions I had set up, there were just a few tweaks that needed to be done. You know, when we think about the state, you know, there's so many different ways to break it up, but I think in this sense, especially thinking about the staffing, the relationships that are already there through the Association of Governments, I wanted to respect that. So they're not exactly to our Association of Governments because we only have 5 regions as opposed to 7. You know, I want to consider staffing. I want to, you know, just basic logistics. But you know, also I think I had like Grand County and San Juan County separated, and they're just like, you can't do that. You know, we have a very similar outlook. We have a lot of relationships we need to maintain in this. Yeah, there's a few other ones, but I think the only difference here with Wasatch Front Regional Council, they're zoned the Wasatch Front region. I actually brought Utah County into that just because they're on the Wasatch Front. And then in my discussions with both MAG and Wasatch Front Regional Council, they're really excited about that opportunity to kind of go cross lines. Because I guess maybe, we silo a lot, but maybe that's an opportunity for them to really start talking about recreation on the Wasatch Front, the highly urbanized areas. And then Morgan County, I actually pulled out of the Wasatch Front region, even though they're in the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and put them in that northern region, just because it seems like they share a little bit more of kind of a recreation experience to the Wasatch back to like the Summit and those kind of counties. So yeah, so far I'm pretty excited about these. I think well, we have Commissioner Taylor on. I think when I announced that I was going to keep 5 counties together, they were all very excited. But just the relationships are in place, and the people know each other. Very, very excited about that. So
can I ask a question?
Oh yeah.
How do we? I fully support this. I like this. I like this division. How do we make sure that in each of these counties, and it doesn't have to be, I guess it doesn't have to be in each of these counties, but how do we make sure that the user groups are represented well in each of these? It'd be very easy in these regional groups for a specific user group to own the direction of projects. Obviously there's motorized in some, there's going to be mountain bike trails on the Wasatch Front are going to be, prioritized or not prioritized, but how do we get equal representation for user groups of all of outdoor recreation? I think that's my next question. Like, not just regionally, but then I want to make sure motorized and mountain bike and climbing and fishing access and there's so many, that whole list of things that we talk about, like what outdoor recreation is.
Yeah,
we get that represented throughout all this.
And that's the $19 million question. And so of course I've thought about that, and in the next few slides, we'll kind of see some of the breakdowns of what these councils will look like, can look like, may look like. Again, I cannot express enough that if there's vagueness, if there's flexibility, that's by design, because I don't want this first go to be what it continues to be forever. But yeah, user groups, it's going to be very, very important. And I think our staff will have a big role in making sure we are connecting with a lot of those organizations, and we are kind of funneling them to the specific councils that we are collecting potential projects from these groups and funneling those. And maybe that's also a nice kind of segue into the next slide, which Carly, I would love for you to be able to talk a little bit about.
All right, here we go. So you might have remembered a moment ago when we shared the timeline that we suggested another OAC meeting in May. And just keep that in the back of your mind as we talk about this idea. And so with this opportunities, particularly with HB 90 passing and the opportunity to use some of these resources for NEPA and planning, it gives us the chance to kind of dovetail what we've already been doing with the Outdoor Recreation Planning Assistance Program and really embellish it and kind of build it out as an arm within the ORI. And so that's kind of one thing that we can talk about is the planning nexus and the technical assistance support. And then the other is how do we grow and evolve, like Patrick mentioned with the guacamole NEPA project, and into being like a project manager. So there's been several different project needs that have arisen throughout the state that really just need support and project management. One of those being the High Desert Trail, which has become a legislative priority over the last couple of years, when it goes through 7 different counties, and it needs kind of that overarching bird's eye view support and project management role. That being one. Another example would be the North Wash boat ramp that's drawn national attention from the guiding and outfitting community, where there's kind of a sore need interjurisdictionally for one kind of project manager and lead. And so with this, we wanted to kind of foster a discussion with you all today and get input from our commissioners here into this idea of a like 6th region, which I don't know if we love that verbiage for it, but basically having the DOR, having the opportunity to come to this commission, not necessarily projects that go up and kind of, filter up through the councils from the boots on the ground, but from that statewide perspective of being you know, of significant value. Being able to come to the commission to say, like, for example, North Wash boat ramp saying, we need a project manager, we need some boat work and some preliminary feasibility work to help, you know, reinstall this boat ramp that's degrading, and being the project manager to go out and deliver on that project. What does that look like? This is new terrain for us. Is this our role, and how we can be most effective as a division? So I don't know if I covered everything. Do you have anything to add either?
You know, you've had the opportunity to introduce this idea, and so just to make it clear to the commission, in my mind, it's pretty simply just that there might be projects that, because of their regional significance or other characteristics, instead of being proposed by one of the regional councils, it's brought to this commission from just the Division of Recreation, saying, hey, here's a need, and it's kind of interjurisdictional between the different regional councils, and the commission can consider those projects along with the ones that are provided by and recommended by the regional councils. So I think it's just really as simple as that. And
Yeah.
doesn't, I certainly think that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, open it up to the commissioners. Any questions about that approach as well? So pretty cut and dry, seems like.
And so kind of in tandem to talk about the ORPA project, I think, you know, technical assistance with one staff can only get you so far. And so being able to come here with kind of a scope and a request and need as we filter through projects and asks that come our way, I think would be another kind of part of that, with us being able to come to you all for approvals similar to how we would with infrastructure projects. So it's kind of a two-pronged kind of request.
Does it make sense to discuss the project in Bicknell and how they're kind of stalled a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the things too, because the planning process has been so new to the division, our grants are a well-oiled machine. And so we're trying to figure out how we can best meet the needs of the communities that we're working with and serving, and getting from planning to building a project and funding it. There's a big gap. And that's why HB 90 was successful this year, is because that gap has been called out and spoken to. But for instance, in Bicknell, we've helped them put together kind of a visioning list of projects that they could do with a lot of public input and an open house and all these things. But now they're still not quite eligible for our grants. They have to go through some EBA steps. They have to do some preliminary feasibility work with, you know, you need to bring an engineer in. And it's been quite frustrating for that community, just because we are able to support them, but we need to close that gap. And so this could be the mechanism for us to really help close that gap from planning and visioning to getting it done, scoping it out, and having additional resources. So thanks for bringing that up, Tara. We're learning a little bit as we go.
Right, and that's really, it sounds like, you know, the role of the Division of Recreation and this commission is to provide that help and support and resources to these local communities to get recreation projects done. And so I think it falls squarely within the mission of both the division and the commission. Well, that's my thought on it. Any other thoughts?
I guess I would just propose an alternate theory. And I'm perfectly fine with this. But some of the processes we've gone through is we would take our potential list of initiatives out through, in this case, the Regional Recreation Council, to see if they, in fact, the communities support those projects, and let them elevate it as a priority potentially. It's just another slightly different process.
Could I piggyback on that? And something that I think is a really great, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Commissioner Jura. But one of the things that we've been thinking about long term is doing some strategic planning for each of these regions that Patrick has worked with our local folks to really divide, so that we could do maybe like a needs assessment. So maybe, we'll come back in the fall once we have these groups set together. We could do some planning and a needs assessment so we can figure out what are those priorities? Does this make sense? Where do we need to focus this planning support? And simultaneously, it can be an opportunity for us to help make our recreation asset database more robust. And we can make that a great resource for all the various needs that'll be applicable for transportation planning, other land use planning scenarios, you name it. So that's kind of like a long term that Patrick and I have been kind of trying to think through how that could look. So yeah, really curious to hear if folks think like what that strategic long term planning, if that kind of dovetails in with what you're hoping to see out of this program.
And I would say out of with the strategic planning, with each of these councils, we have our statewide strategic plan, which kind of informs that greater vision. But as we work with each of these regions, working with them to create these like regional strategic plans, that could be something that we might see as kind of a DOR statewide region. But then those regional recreation plans would be kind of used to inform the projects that are coming out of them. So they actually have a plan. So there is, so when we're talking about user groups, ideally during a strategic planning process, we can identify like, okay, these groups are underserved, these groups, have these maintenance needs. And so it would just really inform how they in turn rank, because we have our prioritization list, and we have the strategic plan, and, there's going to be that local flavor of like what they want to see in their local, in the communities. But I think having a strategic plans and having to find purpose and direction will be so beneficial for like how we kind of get those infrastructure projects through some of these councils.
Yeah, so I see going back both directions on that chain. Yep, from the councils to the councils. It's probably not going to be a surprise to anybody when we come up with a regionally or statewide significant project or something we're looking to take on. But it's that capacity in the systems that we would bring.
And it can be fluid, right?
Of course.
As the organization and structure processes mature,
right,
it doesn't have to stay the same. I guess I would remind everybody.
My question is, and I like that, like being able to, the information to flow back and forth. How do we bring transparency to the communities that these people are representing, right? Like it makes sense, like strategic plan, we have information, maybe it's a big statewide initiative or something like that. So we take it to the regional council of that region. So how do we facilitate that they can get the feedback from the communities that they're representing? We got to think of this as like they're representatives of their community, and that's to avoid one member of this, that loves mountain biking, then they, prioritizing mountain biking, right? As opposed to, I want that transparency to go down through the communities, because I know we have people on here like user group organizations and things like that, and that's great. So, and what Josh is talking about, or Commissioner Van Jura is talking about, probably here. What he's talking about, I think is really great. Like, yeah, let's let them lead out on this and get passion. But the step to that is, if they want to like be driven to like then elevate it and take it, they've probably got to have people knocking on their door to tell them like, you need to elevate and take this, right? So we've got to be sure it trickles down into that transparency for the communities that they represent.
Well, and I think, it would be maybe too much of us to take on if we were to lead. These were going to be coming out of the councils. My expectation is that like we'll have like professional, organizations like working to develop these strategic plans with those communities, so they can work certainly with the councils, but they will also have, the mandate to go into the communities to actually like to get that real holistic view.
Yeah, I don't think it's the job of the division of Found Direct to make sure that you're informing everybody in the state of what's happening. That's like too big of a lift and crazy. But there should be the organizations that are on the ground, whether they have an opportunity to engage with the commission or these regional councils at some point to be like, hey, here's what's being proposed. Go out and activate, in a civil way, like how do we, again, that's the structure that we need to be able to make sure that information is being.
And that could be the potential avenue of the needs assessments, because that could be an intensive public involvement period.
Yeah.
Like where you could do an open house and public surveys and, comments and things like that, so that it's maybe not that kind of, that transparency will build over time, if that makes sense. That's really good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I just don't want to have a user group come to us in a year or two and be like, holy cow, how did these trails get built? Right? And like, no, you should have been involved in that.
That would be a failure to get that.
Right.
And we're well aware of that.
Yeah.
So that is the OHCDOR statewide region. Any other comments, questions before I go on? Specifically at the rosters. I guess not specifically, because you'll notice there's no names on here. So I'm going to show two these are draft. I can't emphasize that. These are draft kind of council makeups. And I kind of want to walk you through, so this first one that's on, this was, this is what I had kind of come up with, and I'm trying to do research on what's the exact amount of people that is the most efficient to make some of these decisions? How do we not get too bloated? How do we, make sure that we're wide enough that we have all of these different organizations? So there's a lot of considerations going into this. My expectation, it's this year we'll probably focus on continually regionally significant projects. The projects is going to be the focus this year, and laying the groundwork for working, to get those community needs assessments to start talking about some of that more long-term planning. But my initial proposal for what a council would look like, and there's no exact number. I mean, councils will be different, the amount of people they have on there, but we'll have a general recreation council, just as many partners as possible. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just to kind of give you a snapshot of what some of these individuals would look like. But the one I want to bring the most attention to for my sake, and just to get your input, if you have, is the ranking committee. As I've been talking about this program, with our association of governments, as I'm in different cities and counties, there is a strong preference for locally led processes, and we at the state do so much to support our federal partners, our counties, our cities and things. But, I just want to make sure that, when these are being ranked, that, the locals really do have that say, so I'm just trying to figure out where our federal partners, where they're going to fit in the actual decision making. They are going to be a crucial partner, as 70% of the state is managed by the federal government in some form or another. They will need to be at the table. They will be presenting so many of these projects. They're, a crucial partner. But I just want to make sure that it's our local committees. I think, just to share a quick anecdote, working, I think when I was presenting to 5 County, a commissioner from Kane County had discussed, some of the projects that have been coming out of Kane that she was just unaware of, because the Forest Service or BLM, they were just kind of moving on projects. And she's like, I wish I would have just known. And she's like, that's great. That's not great, but this is a fix for that, because now we'll have councils, we'll be bringing in all these partners that you can discuss and kind of really find these out. But when it comes to the ranking committee, my initial thought, was, getting 2 members from the Association of Counties, 2 from the Utah League of Cities and Towns, 1 or 2 members from the Area Association of Governments, and really encourage them to think regionally, because that's going to be a potential issue. Is, they really obviously want to take care of their own community. That's kind of why they're elected, but ultimately that's kind of where the ranking will come out of. And I want these to. People will term out. It's not like a permanent seat. But I'm just trying to navigate that. I like the idea of having elected representatives, making these decisions, because then there is an outlet for the general public to communicate with their elected representative who is representing them. But again, I just want to make sure that the regions are being taken care of on a regional scale, and not just kind of looking at one city or one county, one part of one county. So this is kind of what I'm working through. I would love to hear any thoughts or comments about, opportunities to make sure that these are successful in looking at these projects on a regional level. And I guess one other point is, I'm still trying to figure out, I have been, I applied to present at the tribal leadership, the tribal leadership committee. have not heard back, so I'm gonna try to present again to the other one, but I do want to figure out what the role of the tribal is. And, if there's an umbrella role, where they're, maybe they get to give comment on these as they go to the OAC. I mean, I'd like them to be more involved, in the discussions as we're looking at projects, and I'm still working on that. So this could be very important. Same with adaptive, Politico, and, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I'm just trying to think of like some of these more statewide perspectives that we could bring into these projects as well. So this is one example of what a roster will look like. And unless anyone has comments, I'm going to go to the next example.
What's the sorry, what's the reality of having a higher, I don't want to say ranking, but somebody with a little bit more responsibility at the head of each of these regional recreation councils? I'm assuming we'll have a chair or something like that, but like, obviously there's probably not funding to like pay somebody as a part-time position. Why I say that is because we want to make sure, like, that's the person that can make sure that we're thinking regionally or like hitting those boxes that you're checking.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's an appointment, even if it's a volunteer appointment, and we give them a official appointment from the OAC or the governor or the Division of Outdoor Rec or the director of DNR, I don't know, whatever, right? Something like that to put a little bit of weight and responsibility onto the chair or whatever we want to call that person. Again, just to oversee and make sure that it is happening in regional and not getting sucked into a portion of the
Absolutely. And,
region.
and as I've thought about that, I mean, that's been in my discussions with our AOGs, that's discussion I'm having with them, like as having their staff, certain, and they vary, right? Like Wasatch Front Regional Council is a huge organization, but you get to like the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, or CERTA, whatever they recently changed it into, much smaller, but that's the role I'm hoping, and knitly the AOGs can help, because they think regionally, but yeah, and we do intend to have charters, chairs, vice chairs, a system. I think inevitably we'll have more staffing to support this. But yeah, that's going to be the big the challenge, is just having these councils be thinking regional and understanding that, like, if your neighbor gets something awesome, that's great. Not like, why can't we have that? But, and then, so this one, I admittedly, this is very small type. So one of the other things I've been doing is, we're working with Utah State University, and they are putting in a lot of work. Casey Trout, who many of you probably remember from the strategic plan, she's doing her thesis kind of looking at councils, regional councils, really looking deeply at the watershed restoration initiative, looking at neighboring states. They held a focus group here, like 2 focus groups over the course of the day, to kind of talk about councils, and this kind of came out of their report. And so this is another opportunity to view how we look at these. You'll see there's phase 1, 2, and 3. They could really grow, and maybe there is a opportunity for subcommittees and communications teams, a lot of things in the future. That is not my goal for this next year, because I need to be sensible. But as you can see, so they have like an ORI program coordinator, then they have a regional council coordinator. They have their kind of regional outdoor recreation community members. They send proposals to the Outdoor Recreation Council, and then those councils up to like our 7 to 15 voting members, send it to the Outdoor Adventure Commission. So it's similar to what I have. They had concerns about elected officials, serving these capacities because of that challenge for, someone to think regionally as thinking about their districts. So these are things I'm still trying to work through. And as always, any thoughts as you guys are all thinking about it, please let me know, and I would love to get your thoughts. But I'm just sharing this mainly just to see that, like, there's a lot of opportunities for different arrangements. The Watershed Restoration Initiative is a great model. This is a great model. I think the model I have set up, these are all good models. It's just a matter of having the right staffing, the right support, and getting the buy-in from these individuals. So that's where we are on the councils.
And is it fair to say that we'll be discuss again in May?
Yeah.
With kind of the input from today?
Yeah.
So.
And then this is the last slide, just to kind of update on what the project approval flow looks like. So I want to figure out a way that we can still work with the general public, that they can submit projects, that we can in turn like direct those to the correct councils. The ranking, the councils are going to be ranking a lot, but ultimately the commission is going to be tasked with kind of finalizing what those ranked projects are. So instead of having, I can't remember how many presentations we had, we'll just say 18. Instead of having like 18 presentations over the course of 3 months, you'll have, I guess 5 presentations, but those 5 presentations will probably be a little longer. They will be from each of the council chairs, and kind of go over like, these are our rankings and this is why. And then from there, much, UDOC, can look at their list and maybe they really like number 39 and they think it's important. They can pull that one, and choose to fund that one. And so, you all still have a very, very important role, as we think about the flexibility of how the funding works now. We are no longer tied to that same timeline in which we wait for every general session for approval, so that kind of brings in opportunities with that statewide region, with, things that we identify as emergencies. There's just a lot of flexibility, and I think just to kind of put it all into that final package is this really, it's ambitious and I'm very excited about it, but it's really being developed as an opportunity to achieve that strategic plan and to keep the focus on the strategic plan. And I'm just really thankful for all the support I've had, all the people who are offering me great insight. And again, the invitation for anyone to ever talk to me about this is always open. Please, to the commissioners who have already talked about this, thank you. Anybody has any follow-up questions? Ready to move. This is exciting stuff. So that's it for my presentation. I will give the floor back to our chair.
Thanks, Patrick. This is fantastic. It's really exciting to see how you take the ball on with this and organizing it and all the work you've done. So thanks so much. Any other questions, comments? Certainly I want the commissioner, anyone on the commission to be able to weigh in with any thoughts or comments or questions you've got. If not, that's fine, but just make sure that invitation's open.
This is Kelly. I'll just say I really like that model, and I appreciate the work that Patrick and the division team have put into that. So
Thank you.
And I'll just add that, I want this to maintain local communities' ability to pursue their own destinies when it comes down to recreation, and achieve that balance between that autonomy and also looking out for, as pointed out, making sure that we're not pigeonholing one region in one way or another. So I think this is set up well to help us achieve that balance. So
I'm very interested to see, as the word gets out in these local regions, the interest and the participation, and it might, I don't know, but it might take a while, or there might be instant, right away. There's lots of people that want to jump in and participate. So I'm we're very interested to see how that plays out.
Well, we're going to be hyping it up. I'll talk about it at UAC when I'm presenting there next month, and we'll probably talk about it at the league at some point. Get people at least aware of what's coming.
I would venture to guess that there will be much more participation this round than prior rounds, especially with the creation of these regional councils, and people tell their neighbors, friends, and community members about the opportunity.
So one question I have is, especially when you have participation from maybe the general public or user groups like that, I can imagine that there may be interest, someone who, maybe you've got an OHV user or an OHV user group that is very interested in what's going on in Grand County or Emery County or Garfield County. And, so maybe I can imagine that you might be drawing on these councils participation from people outside of those regions as well. There's nothing necessarily that we're putting, that we're preventing that. Of course, if it's an elected official position or something, then it would certainly come from that region. But I could see that also happening as well. And as I think about that, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing.
Admittedly, I've thought about this so much. That's kind of something that I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about. So that's that could be very important to somebody who travels to an area a lot, you know, they want to see, you know, certain developments or a certain lack of development. Yes, I'll definitely need to think about that a little bit more, figure out how.
Or where there's not representation of that group in the area. So I'm trying to think of like climbing areas in Utah, right? Like the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance cares a lot about what's happening in Maple Canyon, but there isn't necessarily like climbing user group representation in that region.
Yeah.
So like, is there input there, or say, you know, same with like you say like motorized, you know, like Emery County, right? Like they need more representation in the motorized roads in Emery County to help with things at the swell and whatever, which majority of those users are coming from, you know, other parts of the state. So
That's really good though.
like the user group representation is important to be very broad, because but at the same time, like to Jason's comments, right? You don't want the voices and the decisions of Salt Lake City to drive necessarily what's happening in rural Utah, because that will backfire real fast. And so there's a very fine balance there in those user groups for sure.
And I mean, there's gonna be a balance between, yeah, just like general public, and how we allow participation, because I want it to be open and transparent, but you know, buildings can only hold so many people. So I want to figure out what is that method in which we.
And everybody wants their own playground.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so there's gonna be a lot of like I've said that it's not gonna be hard to find opinions when it comes to project ideas.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised, so I guess we'll move on. And you have one thing.
I'd like to make a motion.
You make a motion. Okay, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that we consider that extra 500,000 towards the Upper Lake project.
Oh, so wasn't there a which project was it you were saying that they didn't need the full allocation?
That was Duck Creek. That was the Forest Service and Dixie National Forest. They said that they're like, you know, we can put that money to work. They didn't seem that they were running into a big shortfall.
So is it so is there an opportunity to maybe take some of the money that was allocated to that project and put it toward a different one?
I mean, I think they are thrilled about the money they received. We just gave them a partial based on what they had requested, and they said they could move forward with what they received.
We do have funds appropriated if that wasn't possible. Add to the total amount.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is basically to allocate an additional 500,000 from the restricted account to the Upper Lake property acquisition.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
So,
Chair, I would second that. If you're looking for a second.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion.
Can I just ask the simple question? We do have sufficient budget to cover the additional 500,000, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it seems like a silly question, but I feel like it should be stated.
Yeah, good point.
And if I can speak to my motion, I just think this is, as Patrick mentioned, this is something there's keen interest on this land. It's been sitting, private land, restricted, nobody can go there. Forest Service has wanted to acquire it. The answer that we've heard from down there is that we don't need more Forest Service. We need more locally controlled and managed recreation lands. And I'm certainly in favor of that. I feel like Beaver County has proven themselves with their management of Mill Site. In that area that used to be a state park, they've taken over management and made a huge success of it. I think they would probably be in a good position to do the same on Upper Lake.
Can I ask what difference is it? Like 500,000 still doesn't get them to their, like, so they need 5 million, right? So like, does this 500,000 right now get to the point where we can see progress move?
Yeah, maybe Commissioner Taylor understands a bit more than I. Go ahead, Commissioner Taylor.
I believe they have $1 million of their own dollars, right?
Right, so they have $1 million of their own. It's a $7 million total. We already allocated 3.5, but that would only bring them to 5 million.
But the land's listed right now for 4.7. So I think 7 million is for like the whole project, like infrastructure and stuff. But they could at least buy the land with 5 million.
Yeah.
What we're saying. Okay.
Again, I don't want to speak for Commissioner Pierce. years in, but just in our conversations, they, as Jason said, there is interest in this property. 5 million is kind of where they need to be just to acquire the company.
Yeah,
And with their $1 million plus.
It's listed at 4.7 right now.
Oh, you got it. Look.
Yeah, I already actually tried to get financing from my bank.
It was the very same comment. I was just like, where does that get them? And, because I knew they were stalled, and that was a very frustrating, part for Beaver County. Like, great, you got us this, but we're still.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Well, if not, I will place that motion for a vote. Let's just do a voice vote. All in favor of that motion of allocating an additional 500,000 to the Puffer Lake project, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Okay, if there's, the last item of business that we have is the public comment. We have anyone from the public here to speak on any items, either online or in the room? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period and ask for a final motion. Motion to adjourn from Director Curry. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time. We're adjourned.